Okay, well, we've got this very strange retaining clip here for the handbrake operating arm, which is non-Volkswagen, but of course it is available from Just Campers. There's the correct pin there with the slot and the new horseshoe clip. So we need to remove the old pin. Hopefully this will come off fairly easily. Off it comes, and then a little tap. A little wiggle should come off. Again, remembering that this part here will always face to the rear of the vehicle. So the last thing to do is just to get the springs out. These springs are quite strong, remember, so you might need to use a little force. And there we go. Okay, so we're going to put a new pin in on here because that handbrake does receive quite a lot of force on there, as we have the new one here. It's just a case of tapping it out and try not to move it, and then you can put the orientation back in properly. There's the new one, and here's our new horseshoe clip. So again, not losing the orientation, we need the hook towards the rear bumper. Put it in there, we didn't need to hammer it. Turn it over, and this can be a bit tricky because you need to try and keep that up. Sometimes a screwdriver or a hammer handle. So we're just making sure that that hook is facing towards what will be the rear of the van for the handbrake cable to fit over. Make sure we've got that right before we clip it together. And just holding that pin up, and then we're going to close up the horseshoe clamp to retain that pin. So be careful when you're doing it, you don't want to slip and squash your thumb. And whilst you're applying that pressure, try and make sure both those arms are coming in together at the same rate. Otherwise you may peel one side over too much. Okay, there we go. It's nice and secure on there, and just make sure that it can rotate freely, because as you're pulling the handbrake on, that's where it's pivoting. The things to look at then with the handbrake bar, the spreader plate, however you want to refer to it, is we have one slot that's relatively short and the other that's longer. One goes into the front shoe, and the longer slotted one with the offset here goes onto the back shoe with the handbrake operating lever on it. Okay, what you need to do is put the edge of the spring through the first side. This will engage onto the brake shoe, and this other part here, the slot, will be on our lever. All will become clear. Hopefully it will go through nicely, and we just pull it up, a little gentle wiggle around. And then you can clearly see the spreader plate locating on the shoe, and then the handbrake lever going down through the slot. Well, he's a genius. So we're going to have a look again at the star adjusters. Now the important things to bear in mind are the little spring clip here, because they are prone to rusting and breaking off, and really there's not much of a repair you can do, so it's definitely time for new backing plates there. And we've discussed the fact that when they turn, as you're turning there, this bolt stays static, but in effect it will be winding out. It is the star adjuster that moves that winds this out, which brings the brake shoe out. But these can get very rusty, as can the screw threads in there. So it's important to take them out and give them a good clean up and a greasing, or if necessary, and I strongly advise it to be honest, because you often see these teeth worn away or broken off even, just buy new ones like these. Just to put a dab of grease. Obviously we don't want to plaster everything with greasing, because we don't want it falling off and dropping onto the brake shoes themselves. It would make them totally inoperative. So a little smear of grease. And I'm using general purpose grease here, but a lot of people like to use copper slip, anything that'll do the job basically. And we just pop them in there and just make sure they rotate okay. New gloves now then, so that we don't contaminate our new brake shoes. And it is a bit of a wiggle as we go down, but it is important to be wary of the wheel cylinder and the rubbers up there. You don't really want to be damaging those. Down we go. And the other thing to bear in mind at this stage, do it now, is just re-engage the handbrake cable onto there. You'll never be able to do this unless you slacken the handbrake cables right off. Okay, now we're ready to fit the anti-squeal pins and locate everything into the wheel cylinder. All of the anti-rattle, anti-squeal pins, or however you want to refer to them, in good condition, so we put it in from behind. And we'll just use that as a locator for the time being and put the shoe in. We're not worried too much about it all being perfectly lined up, just get it into position. And the same again with the top one. We'll put the springs back over the anti-rattle pins in a moment, but the important thing is to make sure that you've clipped the shoe into the star adjuster. And we've already seen earlier on the backing plate how those springs go back into position. Okay, the last thing then is our bottom spring, and that's a case of poking it through the hole on this side, putting it up somewhere close, and this one can be a bit of a fiddle, so carefully as you go. Nice deep breaths, pull it out, poke it in, job's a good one. The last thing we'll do is give a few clicks on the adjusters before we put the drum over, just so that we're not wasting a lot of time underneath with the star adjuster. And by bringing this out a few clicks now, you can also see the orientation, whether you're going to be spinning up or spinning down when you're doing it from underneath. Sometimes does get a bit confusing, as I've just gone the wrong way there.